Nikki, where is Paul exactly? I mean, I know he's in Naples, but is he on the island? Is he on the island, or the bear? He's on the beach. Okay,
no,
winds are offshore
Jim,
right now,
I'm
as Paul's been talking about. Paul's been talking. Oh, okay, so on the beach. So we've seen the winds kind of blowing all that water out to sea. We know that's going to turn around and come back in at some point. We know Paul's not going to be standing there when it does. Paul, so we've had a gust now to 79 in Naples. What have you gotten down there? Have you felt those kind of gusts?
Yes, definitely, Jim. We're getting well over 60 to 70 mile per hour wind gusts from time to time. And you mentioned them on the beach. And again, this water is farther out than it typically is. Predominant easterly winds. They've been blowing with an easterly component for about 2 days now, and it continues to be stronger and stronger. And in fact, all this where I'm standing is typically underwater, even at low tide. In fact, this is a conch shell, and this is how much water it is. It's a small little conch. It's still alive as well, and there's seagrass growing on it. So typically, this little guy is under a couple of feet of water, but because of the persistent easterly winds, it continues to blow farther back off. And again, that's a sign of how shallow and gentle sloping this coastline is, which is horrible for storm surge, because it's going to really build in here and then travel inland a lot longer as it gently kind of pushes up the coastal plain here. So a real big concern here, and we've had word where our fallback location is, the Hilton, that they've already lost power this morning with these strong gusty winds. We've heard at least 4 kind of arcing power lines this morning with some of the stronger wind gusts. Definitely about an hour ago with a 60-something mile per hour wind gust, and now with a 70-plus mile per hour wind gust. So we're getting close to hurricane force wind gust across this area of Naples, and we'll continue to see it coming in from the east for most of the day as the hurricane approaches from the south. You got to remember, it's a counterclockwise rotation, so we're going to see that easterly component continue across this area, and then when the center passes us by, we start shifting from the east to the north, to the northwest, and then the west and southwest. So just like a counterclockwise rotation, and that's going to help push that surge farther inland as well. So just because you think the strongest winds in the center have passed you by doesn't mean the strongest winds have passed you by, and that storm surge is also another thing that we're going to worry and watch about. And you might come out here now and thinking, oh well, hey, there's no, where's the coastline, where's the water? They're so far from this 15 feet of storm surge. Again, we're just coming off of low tide with the persistent easterly wind, and we will see things change dramatically as we head over the next 12 hours. So all the officials are saying, now's the time to shelter in place. They're cutting back even responses from first responders. And a couple of days ago, we were down on Marco Island, and here the power is out over there, and that's a place you do not want to be, because most of that island and most of the roads could be underwater if you get a 10, even 12-foot storm surge, and let alone the up to 15 feet. That is the worst case forecast with this. But again, the winds continue to pick up here. So the best weather here in Naples is already passed you by for the rest of the day. And as Irma approaches this area, you got to remember, most people have never been here. The last time we had a hurricane directly impact Naples, that was Hurricane Donna on this date back in 1960. They had 121 mile per hour wind gusts here in Naples and sustained at about 91 miles per hour. So we could see weather conditions similar to that, maybe even exceed that, as we continue to go through the rest of this Sunday as we await the approach of Hurricane Irma. And again, force winds, but I will be nowhere near this Gulf as we head later on today with the approach of Irma. Carl?
All right, Paul, thank you so much. And we have a new advisory right now from the National Hurricane Center. As of 11 a.m., the storm is still a Category 4 storm with winds of 130 miles per hour. Pressure is up a little bit. We can hope for some slight weakening, but it's going to be a formidable storm as it comes in. A little bit of a change in the track just right along the coast there. It's been narrowed as well, which is what you'd expect as you get closer in time, coming up right across Tampa and towards Tallahassee. But of course, it's an exceptionally large storm. 220 miles is the radius radius of tropical storm force winds. And because the storm has shifted just a little bit to the right, we're now seeing those hurricane force wind gusts extending all the way across the state rather than cutting short along the East Coast, extending all the way to 95 and A1A. That's looking at 9:30 tonight. Hurricane force winds coming up into Tampa and St. Pete at that time, then moving up and across areas north of Orlando, Gainesville, and into Leesburg tomorrow early in the morning, and then continuing up towards Tallahassee. Looking at the radar trends here, we see that there was a northward component, but now it does appear to be shifting more towards the north-northwest. So it looks like it is on track to be moving towards Naples and Fort Myers. Winds have really been picking up, 56 at the airport there in Naples, but we did get a mesonet report of winds gusting to 79 miles per hour in Naples, 62 in Pompano Beach. And that eye wall, that most dangerous part of the storm, now about 40 miles away from Naples and Marco Island. So on its present speed and course, probably coming in about 4 to 5 hours. Somewhere in there is where the very worst of the weather is going to be coming into Naples and Marco Island. And we're getting a lot of these heavier banding features now moving up and across Miami-Dade County. So exceptionally heavy rain, but also very strong wind. That strong wind actually causing the collapse of a construction crane boom and counterweight over a building in downtown Miami. To the north, I want to tell you about a tornado warning. Brevard County, looking at a circulation that has broadened out a little bit right in there, just to the west of 95. Also a couple of tornado warnings in the central part of the state. One of those in Hillsborough, Pasco, and Polk counties. There are two separate circulations that we're watching in this case. One of them now just to the east of 98, moving towards Zephyr Hills, be coming into Zephyr Hills at 11:27. Another one now just about on top of Polk City, and that's going to be moving towards Polk City at 11:15 just about now, getting a little farther to the west of 98, coming up in about 10 minutes or so. Here is the model forecast. And this model doing, I think, a very good job of representing how it is all going to be developing going through this afternoon. There you see the core of the storm right there, that most dangerous part of the storm coming in early in the afternoon into Naples, getting towards Fort Myers. You've still got hurricane force winds with banding features in the south part of Florida, from Miami-Dade all the way up through Broward, Palm Beach County, and farther north. Then later on today, more towards the evening, that core of the storm, that eye wall, what remains of it, is going to be moving up towards Tampa as well as Bradenton and Sarasota. On the underside of the storm is where we see a tremendous onshore flow, and that's going to bring waves and surge into southwest Florida. And what we're looking for right now is something on the order of 10 to 15 feet. And then we're going to watch that storm continue to move up and into the northern part of the state beyond that. So storm surge forecast looking for 10 to 15 feet near Naples, Marco Island, 6 to 10 farther to the north. That is life-threatening storm surge. And then also, as we take a look at the wind forecast going forward, we expect that these very strong winds will make it all the way up into North Georgia. So power outages likely to be widespread well up into the southeast. Much more coming up.
And breaking news, of course, we're going to start getting more and more news now as we get closer to the center of the hurricane across the mainland here in Florida. News out of Miami right now. You saw Mike Seidel's shots of taking it on the chin there right in downtown. Well, at least one construction crane has collapsed on a building, at least one on a building in downtown Miami, as Hurricane Irma has brought these incredible winds. Near 100 miles per hour reported at the airport. The crane was reportedly down in an area northeast 2nd Avenue and 3rd Street. Reportedly down on northeast 2nd Avenue and 3rd Street, which isn't too far from where we were. There are literally dozens and dozens of cranes in downtown Miami as a result of the incredible boom in this city, especially in the financial district. We were showing you some of these by drone the other day, and we were talking about our concerns for them, especially when we thought that the actual center was going to come right into Miami. So even without the eye wall, and even with a crane wind load, from what I was told to by an operator of 145 miles per hour, we have gotten one of those cranes to collapse, all right? So let's talk about why the wind is so much different when you're up high where these cranes are. I want to bring Carl Parker back in to talk about this. Carl, again, the higher up you go, and the first best example of this is the hurricane hunters. Right? I mean, we see their winds so much stronger than the flight level than we do at the surface, but they're stronger too at the top of some of these big skyscrapers.
Yeah, exactly, Jim. And when you don't have friction, you're going to get a much stronger wind. We see that in the velocity data all the time, that the winds, in fact, all across areas of the Atlantic just off the coast of South Florida, now well above 100 miles per hour. And so where we get heavier bands, it brings that down. But if you've got buildings that poke up into that area where you've got those stronger winds, then you're going to increase that wind speed rather dramatically. You know, Jim, I also wanted to tell you about something. I just got word from this from our Dr. Matt Zukowski, because it is really remarkable. You remember seeing the pictures from the Bahamas of the water actually leaving the shoreline in some areas because the offshore flow was so pronounced. Well, we are hearing right now that the water...
Yes, I do.
We are hearing now that the water is now doing that in Tampa Bay. It's now, because of that offshore flow, we're seeing the water actually exiting Tampa Bay, and we've got a water level that's now about 3.5 feet below what is typical, the normal tide level there in Naples. So just a testament to the power of the offshore flow of the storm. And of course, on the other side of the storm, it's going to be considerably higher. We're looking for a life-threatening storm surge coming in on the backside of the storm as it moves up and along the coast, Jim.
Yeah, and Carl, and it's irrelevant if it weakens from 4 to 3. We're still going to get the same fetch and the same return. So guys at home, if you want to see what Carl and I are talking about, take a bowl or I'm sorry, a plate that's got edges on it and fill it up with water, okay, and lay it flat like this. That's on a non-windy day. When you tip that bowl like this, all the water goes from the right side to the left side and more than likely overflows the plate. Well, when you tip the bowl this way, which is when the winds come onshore, here comes the water back the other way. That's exactly what is happening right now off the Florida West Coast. And unfortunately, it is, I don't want it to, because there's just not that much experience with hurricanes on this side, especially ones of this magnitude, I don't want people to be sensed into or lulled into a false sense of security here. Because it's that water going out that shows you what we anticipated to happen is actually happening. It's confirmation of what is to come. And Carl, give us an idea, if we can time this out, maybe with a wind loop, Cinco, of when we're going to see the center, just kind of go hour by hour, move north. So when it gets into Marco, when it gets into Naples, Fort Lee County, Charlotte County, all the way up to Hernando County, for that matter, if we can, and even into Hillsborough County for Tampa Bay. We can show you when that water is going to come in. And I'm telling you one thing, because I've experienced it a gazillion times. We'll do this when we come back, by the way, how quickly that water comes in. I saw it in Katrina. I saw it in Arthur. Do you remember Arthur? Back on July 4th a few years ago, I saw that in the Outer Banks, where the wind got pushed toward the mainland in North Carolina, and we were on the Outer Banks. And then when the wind shifted, it came back up on the other side. The wind is controlling the water right now off the west coast of Florida. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to our continuing coverage of Hurricane Irma. I'm meteorologist Paul Goodlow in Naples, Florida, and the winds have been gusting at times well over 60, even report of a 79-mile-per-hour wind gust. That's now hurricane force wind gust in the Naples area. So we are now beginning to feel those strong winds which have been lashing Fort Lauderdale and Hollywood and even Miami all morning long. And now they're moving across the state into the southwest corner of the state, while the center of Irma has already made landfall down in the lower Keys, and that continues to move this way into the Gulf of Mexico and eventually perhaps overwash this beach with maybe 10 to 15 feet of storm surge later on today. Looks baffling. You look behind me, you're thinking, there's a lot of open beach here, Paul. How in the world are we going to get a storm surge back over here? Well, we just had low tide, but we also, for the last 48 hours or more, have been dealing with a persistent easterly wind, which is coming from behind the camera towards me, which has been physically pushing the water farther and farther out. Now, think about that. You got a big bathtub or a big tub of water. You pull up on one end starts to kind of dry out. The water rushes to the other end. If you drop that tub, the water comes sloshing on back, except this time you're almost picking up the other end. That other end being picked up is going to be Irma coming this way, and we could have that right front quadrant coming right along the coastline here, helping to pick up and push this water as a storm surge. That's why there is so much concern, and rightfully so. So many people across Collier County and Lee County and all across southwestern and western Florida have evacuated off the coastline. Yeah, we're here now because we still have several more hours, and we do have our fallback positions to go to. And again, we just see just some hotels and condos and homes over here and a couple of palm trees. Again, they're losing some of the fronds as well, with the strong gusty winds increasing in this area. I want to go to my colleague Jim Cantori, who's up the road in Fort Myers. And Jim, I think one point that a lot of people don't.
I just lost comms. What's going on? Did you lose comms? We lost. Okay. We lost. I was just waiting for the question, and I thought that I just had lost communication for some reason. Anyway, guys, we've had our first little palm frond here down in the parking lot. This isn't the only thing. Probably gusting 50, 55 now. Of course, it stops, but that's what it is. It kind of builds and stops, builds and stops, builds and stops. As a buddy of mine just sent me some video out of the Jasper area, which is north of Atlanta. Okay, and with him. There's already some very breezy, it's a sunny day, but it's getting kind of breezy. So that pressure gradient has already stretched even up to the north side of Atlanta. Wanted to go over here, Steve, because I saw some other tree debris. So look at it, trees like this, real soft wood, they're up against this building, the wind's accelerating a little bit. So we've got just a few limbs down, but trust me, this is nothing compared to what we're going to see at the height of this thing, okay? It's going to get a lot stronger in through here, and that's why we need people to hunker down. But over the next several hours, this is what we anticipate, okay? The winds are going to pick up. They're going to get stronger. We're going to lose power here, all right? I've already briefed my guys on that. We're going to lose power. At some point, because we're actually coming to you from a cell, we're going to try and obviously keep that service up as long as we can. We've got our satellite truck hunkered down in a safe place so we can bring you aftermath and show you what actually happened after this thing goes by. It's hard to believe in 24 hours the sun actually may be out here. Can you believe that? And it's going to be all calm. But we're going to go through a hell of a time before we get there. I'm going to tell you that right now. All right, I want to bring in Carl again. Cinco's got him ready with these graphics. Let's talk about this, Carl. I want you to give everybody who's watching us, from Collier to Lee to Charlotte, all the way up to Tampa and Hillsborough County, what's going to happen again. Everybody's talking about this wind now being pushed offshore, even into the Tampa Bay. When's it going to come back in?
Yeah, Jim, well, that's going to be on the underside of that eye wall there, and so that's going to be happening through the course of this evening. So we can actually take a look at what is called the HUR model here, the high resolution rapid refresh model. And you see that eye wall, which is now probably about 4 to 5 hours away from getting into Naples. So the very worst of the wind is going to be moving into Naples through this afternoon, and then it's on the underside of that circulation right in there. That's when we start seeing that tremendous surge. That'll be coming across the Keys there and into southwest Florida. We continue to take this into late afternoon. We watch that eye wall come up right into Fort Myers. That's going into, say, 6 o'clock. And so again, on the back side of the circulation, that's when the water's really starting to come up there around Marco Island and Naples. You know, Marco Island, exceptionally vulnerable to surge. You've got a very shallow shelf and a lot of homes that are sitting right on the water there. And we could be talking about water getting to 10 to 15 feet above normally dry ground. Then we take this into the evening. We watch that center of circulation getting farther up towards Siesta Key and Sarasota and Bradenton. That's going into 10 o'clock tonight. So we're starting to see that water rising where Jim is. There's the onshore flow that is coming into Naples there, certainly, but also starting to get into Fort Myers on the underside of the circulation. And then as the storm continues to lift up farther to the north, very strong winds along I-4 between Tampa and Orlando. And on the backside, we're starting to see the water coming up with the onshore flow into the late evening and overnight hours around Siesta Key, around Bradenton, and then getting into Tampa and St. Pete overnight tonight, very late tonight and early tomorrow morning, Jim. So you're looking at a prolonged period here of an onshore flow that's going to be occurring on the backside of that core, of that center of circulation as it moves up and along the coast. And let's take a look at the radar picture right now and show you some of what is going on, some of the trends here. We're getting some of the radar data popping out. We saw more of a northward component to the motion within the last couple of hours, but if you eyeball it there, let me redraw that. If you eyeball it, you can see how there was a northward component, and now there appears to be more of a north-northwest component. So I think we had a little bit of a wobble that made it appear as if though it was moving to the north, and now it's more solidly moving off towards the north-northwest. Winds now getting up to 60 miles per hour in Naples. So as more of these bands continue to move onshore, the winds will get stronger and stronger, still gusting to 66 in Pompano Beach. And that eye wall, that's the very most dangerous part of the storm, now only about 40 miles from Marco Island and Naples. And so on its current trajectory and speed, it's probably going to be coming in about 4 to 5 hours or so. That's when the very worst of the weather is going to be moving into Naples. And initially, it's going to be this offshore flow, but that's when we're going to see water actually being pushed away. And then on the backside again is when it's really going to be maximizing in terms of surge and wave action. And then here you see in Miami, we've got some big banding features coming up into South Miami-Dade. You heard about that construction crane collapsing in downtown Miami. Ongoing concerns with wind there. And then on top of all of that, we've got a tornado warning to tell you about. There are actually a couple of them, one in Brevard County here. We've been watching a little circulation, sort of a broader circulation, but then a tinier one that is now right next to the radar. It's just about ready to come into that radar site. See right there, that could very well be a tornado. Let's take that off to the north and west. I'm going to get a sense of the vector here. Looks like that's coming out of the east-southeast, so taking that forward, that'll come towards 95, getting into Melbourne 11:37, just a couple of minutes, and moving towards Sable Elementary School at 11:41. Then into the central part of the state, we've been watching some stronger storms here too, but tornado warnings have been canceled. That's what you expect to see in this case. Oftentimes, you'll have some tornado warnings that will be very fleeting in nature. They tend not to last very long at all. So I want to show you the latest forecast track and intensities from the Hurricane Center. You notice they are taking it right up and along the coast, so it could make landfall at any time this afternoon, depending on exactly how close to the coast it is. If it's a little farther offshore, it may take longer. But the upshot is that we're going to have these hurricane force winds all along this stretch of coastline from southwest Florida, Naples, Fort Myers, right up and into Tampa, all along 75 there, which means a relentless pounding of wind. This is a look at the area of strong winds, and so the cone is related to the center of the circulation, but you see that huge area of hurricane force winds, much larger area of hurricane force gusts, solidly now into South Florida. We take it into this evening, 9:30, hurricane force winds sustained now between Naples and Fort Myers up through Siesta Key, Sarasota, Bradenton into Tampa, and hurricane force gusts all the way out to the East Coast. from Orlando, from the Space Coast on southward towards Port St. Lucie, right down into Jupiter and down towards Hobie Sound there in West Palm Beach as well. And then that area of hurricane force winds comes up into areas near 75, the Big Bend of Florida, and near 75 northwest of Orlando. Hurricane force gusts into Jacksonville and Orlando, and then you've got the tropical storm force winds that come up even farther to the north. I want to show you a little bit about the long term of the storm here as well. We'll take it forward and go past Monday morning, go into Monday middle of the day. We could see this most dangerous core of the storm coming up into Tallahassee at that time, and then the strong winds are going to get up into Georgia. Now, some of the modeling has told us that we might be looking at winds gusting to 60 to 70 miles per hour in the Atlanta metro. The last time something like this happened was Hurricane Opal, going back to 2005, and we saw a tremendous amount of wind damage in the Atlanta metro. A lot of trees there, and thousands of them came down in Opal. We could be looking at something similar in this case, and then that's going to begin to wind down through the course of the day on Tuesday. So there's a look at the advisory. There are tropical storm warnings now in effect for much of north and central Georgia, as well as parts of South Carolina and even into Alabama. And power outages are likely to be widespread, not just in Florida, but also up through much of the state of Georgia as well, and right into parts of South Carolina because of all that wind. And we want to take a live look right now at Naples, Florida, and the winds now really beginning to pick up in this area. We've gotten a report already of winds gusting to 79 miles per hour at the Mesonet station there in Naples. The airport gusting into the 60s. And so some of these banding features are beginning now to come in. And again, what we're expecting is that the most dangerous part of the storm, the eye wall, the core of the storm, is probably now about 4 to 5 hours away from coming into Naples. So when that happens, that's where we're going to be getting into that extreme wind there in Naples, and then another few hours, and it's going to be coming up into Fort Myers. Let's get back out to Jim Cantori in Fort Myers. And Jim, just no way of getting around it. We're in for a major windstorm there in southwest Florida.
The worst of this, Carl, like you mentioned, on final approach as we go through the next 4 to 12 hours, certainly for southwest Florida. And again, guys, remember, we've already had a gust at Naples International of 79 miles per hour, okay? We've had in that, the Weather Service, I saw the data, so it's a confirmed gust, 79 miles per hour there. We're easily getting tropical storm force in through here. And one of the reasons I know that is because now all of a sudden the scent of wood, fresh wood, has gone by my schnoz, and that means we've got easily breakable tree limbs. Trees are down in places. We've got some video that we shot from our drone that we're going to share with you. We put that up. It can actually handle 50-mile-per-hour winds, but it was getting a little rough even with that, so we're taking it down. But here's the deal. If we've already had 79 at Naples, Bonita Springs, you're going to get that next. Then it's coming up here toward Fort Myers. So conditions are going to rapidly deteriorate. If you haven't lost power and you're not out of that surge zone, they're still opening at these shelters in Lee County, but still, guys, the longer you wait, I'm telling you, you're putting yourselves in harm's way. There's going to start to be tree damage and structural damage as we get these winds up over 75 and over toward 100 miles an hour and 120, as they will come in the next 4 to 12 hours. Again, you can just see everything blowing around here. We've had steady rain, very, very, it's pretty rare to get a break in the rain at this point. And if it does, it's still raining horizontal in most cases. Both the hotels here where we're at, we're just right off 75. The Residence Inn and also the Courtyard are absolutely full to capacity. You can see every single parking space here is full. And a lot of people that I've talked to have come either from areas that are under the surge warning, okay, or areas that they just felt that their structure wasn't strong enough. Either way, we're all going to lose power down and through here. And I just want everybody to prepare for that. There's a point where the TV's going to go out. There's a point where the power is going to go out, and then eventually, especially with the kind of wind we're anticipating, cell service will probably also go out. So that's what I want you to plan on if you've still got power. All right, we got Paul Goodloe back. Paul, let me know where you're going from the beach there and getting inland. Let me know when you're going and how far that is from you.
Yeah, we're going back to the Hilton eventually. Once you leave the beach here, we got reports that the Hilton there in Naples has also lost power already. There's a gentleman who lives across the street here. He said they still have power right here along the beach, but farther inland, again, because the wind is coming from inland towards the shore, we've already lost power out here as well. Hey, Jim, if you're still there, I want to ask you a question about just the irony of what's been happening today. Again, on this day, September 10th, we had a landfall of Irma already on the Keys. Eventually, it's going to come up here, make landfall southwest coast of Florida here, west coast of Florida. Right. 57 years to the day of the last hurricane, Cat 4, major hurricane to impact the Keys. That was Donna, and also that did devastation here in the Naples area. Storm surge of 4 to 7 feet, devastating much of downtown Naples. Well, I mean, what do you think about the irony, the symmetry of this happening on the anniversary of Donna?
It blows my mind, both Donna and the Labor Day hurricane of 1935. The similarities, as Paul said, with the date and even the strength with Donna. And also, I think the track is more a 35 hurricane track in the fact that it came up through the Keys and the west coast of Florida. So it's eerie. These are all very similar strengths. And by the way, both of those hurricanes, if you want to go back in history, caused a tremendous amount of damage. So we're not going to sugarcoat this. We're not trying to dial it up for TV. The fact is these were two hurricanes that are comparable in different ways, ironically or not, that caused a tremendous amount of damage. And that is the picture that I need to paint for you guys, because this is very serious, what is going to happen here across southwest Florida, and where really ever this eye wall touches. It's already come through the Keys, and they're still getting the southern end of the eye wall now. It is making its way. It is on final approach toward Marco. So Paul, what are you guys leaving there?
Perhaps around an hour or two, and again, it's amazing watching how much of this Gulf has receded back in there with those strong easterly winds. And you know, it's similar to like a warning sign for a tsunami. You start seeing much more of the coastline exposed, and people run out there, and then the tsunami comes back this way. We're not talking about a tsunami, but it's going to be similar to that with a storm surge in terms of we've seen a lot more of the coastline exposed, and when the surge comes in, it's going to cover that and more and take that ocean, this Gulf, inland a ways. So I'm really concerned about people out here. In fact, this gentleman we talked to who lives across the street, he's out here kind of walking the beach. Again, we still have a couple of hours ahead of time, but there's not going to be much warning when these winds shift and the surge starts coming this way. And again, he's walking in an area that is typically under a foot or two of water, even at low tide. So it's definitely kind of it's a spectacle to see. But as we've been saying, this is not the time to look at this. Look at it here on TV. Don't come down here in person, because the threat is real. The threat is significant, especially as we head over the next several hours. And we go back to the symmetry of Donna. About half the people who died in Donna drowned. Now, that's so much not from the freshwater like we had with Harvey in Texas. That was from the storm surge, from the Keys all the way through here in the Naples area. That is storm surge, and that's how people drowned. And that's what we're trying not to happen here across Florida, is that storm surge coming in and people drowning because they didn't evacuate, or they came out here to take a look at how much more beach is exposed before that surge comes in here. So yes, it's similar to Donna, even the 35 hurricane, but as we know, Jim, every single hurricane is unique, and Irma already is very unique in its track, in its forecast, and already the damage, it's already done.
And Paul, the other thing too, I can't imagine what it's like right now, especially in some of these coves where, you know, people have their boat docks and their boats stored, the beautiful mangroves and whatnot, where all that water is drained on out. But I'm going to tell you right now, when that wind turns, even when it starts to calm, all right, if the wind starts to calm, the water's going to start coming back in. And then the wind is just going to shove it in. So it's not only going to come back to where it was, but it's going to go even higher than that. And that's what we're talking about. These storm surge inundation maps are essentially a worst case scenario and the highest the water could get. So if you know that your street and your house is at that, depending on where that worst case scenario is, that could be how high the water is, whether it's your doorstep or actually inside your home. Guys, be careful. Don't misjudge the surge, please. We'll be back.
Irma has either made or is about to make landfall somewhere in the lower Keys. Another major Category 4 hurricane is about to make landfall again in the U.S. Winds gusting well over hurricane force. Reports of widespread power outages and even damage.
National Weather Channel, 25 years, and this is about the strongest wind I've taken.
The first time that we've seen two Category 4s making landfall in one season. It's a long duration event because this storm is so large.
Whoa, I could feel that one.
All right, guys, we haven't seen the worst of this in Southwest Florida. We are talking about something that is going to be a very powerful and destructive hurricane. There's no getting around it. There's no sugarcoating it. It's probably going to stay very close to the intensity that it's at right now. 5 miles an hour either way is not going to make any difference whatsoever. And here's what a tropical storm wind gust did where we are in Fort Myers. Okay? Just kind of pulled a piece of this right off. Again, what you've got to remember is once you start getting around these buildings, a 50-mile-an-hour wind can turn into a 75-mile-per-hour wind just because of the Venturi effect, the way it has to be squeezed together and accelerated through that area. And both of these hotels, the parking lots are absolutely full with folks at the present time. Stick around. We are going to hear from Governor Rick Scott in just a moment. We got a chance to talk to him earlier on the Weather Channel. And I won't lie, I mean, just watching him over the past several days and even other events, I can tell he's very worried about his state, and he's very worried about the people. That's his number one concern right now. I know that he wants to make sure that everybody who had a chance to leave did. He wants to make sure that, you know, everything was done that could have been done so that they could help you get out of harm's way, from the Weather Service and the evacuation orders to the Hurricane Center to the hurricane hunters being our heroes in the first line of defense. I hope that everybody's prepared for this, because there's no way around it. It is going to be a very destructive hurricane as we go through the next 12 hours here in Southwest Florida. All right? And I can't believe the sun may even come out tomorrow. Nikki, what time is that presser scheduled with the governor? About how much time? All right, so 12 people. Right at noon, we're going to get that. Again, guys, we're at the Courtyard in the Residence Inn right here just off of 75. This is right near the Germain Arena area where they're housing over 5,000 people right now. 5,000. Lee County alone has 30,000 people in shelters. 30,000 people, which is just an incredible number of people. And they are ready and willing even to accept others. But here's the deal. If you're going to evacuate, you need to do it now, because there is, again, signs of debris rolling around on the roads. There are winds with these bands that are going to get stronger and stronger and stronger, and we're going to be in the worst of this probably over the next 4 to 6 hours as it continues to come onto the north. The radars are out right now, at least temporarily. I don't know if that's just temporary in Miami and also Key West. So we have to look at this from Tampa's radar, at least, you know, from a radar scope or a Doppler radar perspective. Some of the local stations certainly may have their own radars, but we have to look at it from those radars. And, you know, you're not going to get a bird's eye view of where that eye is. But Carl Parker can do that with a composite radar for us. So let's go back to the studio and get an idea of what this thing is doing. Carl, let me ask you, for Naples, for Fort Myers, when would you say that northern eye wall or even northeastern eye wall gets here, depending on which side it goes on?
Well, Jim, it looks like it's about 35 to 40 miles away from Naples right now. So you're talking about moving in about 4 to 5 hours. So Fort Myers just a little bit longer than that, closer to 5 to 6 hours, I would say, somewhere in that vicinity. You were talking about the radars also. That apparently, Jim, is a comms issue as opposed to a radar issue. So we do expect to continue to get radar information. Also want to show you here, you notice in the satellite picture, for a time it appeared that the storm was moving straight north, but now it does appear to be on that north-northwest trajectory. It has moved more back towards the north-northwest, and oftentimes you will see that with hurricanes. They will wobble a little bit and give you a false impression. So it does look like we're very much on track for the storm to move right up and along the coast into Naples, Fort Myers, into Siesta Key, into Bradenton, Sarasota, Tampa, and then beyond that towards the Big Bend area and into Tallahassee as it continues to slowly weaken. So looking at the model forecast here, it may not happen exactly like this, but this gives you an idea of how it may go down. And here you see that eye wall starting to approach as we get into the early afternoon. And again, it's probably going to be coming in about 4 hours or so. Then going into late afternoon, we're just getting pounded at that time in Naples and Fort Myers by that most dangerous eye wall. We had winds already of 120 miles per hour in near Key West in the Keys, the middle part of the Keys, and we'll continue to see exceptionally strong wind, well over 100 miles per hour, at least in gusts. And you've still got an onshore flow there coming into South Florida, so winds still gusting well over 100 miles per hour. In fact, we just got a report from Broward County of winds gusting to 109 miles per hour. I'll show you that in just a moment. Then here comes the eye wall moving into Tampa and St. Pete, solidly into Bradenton and Sarasota by late this evening. Winds are beginning to come down just a little bit there in South Florida, but it's going to be hour after hour after hour, and some things, some trees, some tree limbs, power lines, structures are going to give way. Not entire structures necessarily, but parts of them will give way just because of the sheer duration of this event. And then we see that strongest wind coming into that I-4 corridor and points farther north, Leesburg and the Villages and Fruitland Park coming in early tomorrow morning, and then continuing through the middle to latter part of the morning. Winds then picking up in Tallahassee. Notice the onshore flow here coming into the southeast. And also you've got this tremendous onshore flow on the backside of the system that kicks in behind that eye wall. And so that's when we see the maximum surge effects there in Tampa along the west coast going into very late tonight and early tomorrow morning. And then beyond that, the storm comes up into Georgia, and there could be significant wind for a lot of the southeast, talking about trees and power lines coming down and widespread power outages as a result. And finally, that wind starts to let go a little bit going into the middle of the day on Tuesday. So here's a look at the current structure of the storm, and you notice the eye wall sort of truncated here. You've got a ring of storms around the northern part of the eye wall. We're not seeing that on the southern side. Looks like some dry air has infiltrated the circulation, but that northern eye wall certainly holding together, and again is not very far away from Naples. But then you've got these banding features as well, and within those banding features, which now extend across Miami-Dade and also into the southwest part of the state, you're getting exceptionally strong wind. Winds now gusting to 64 in Naples, gusting to 58 in Pompano. And again, you're talking about the eye wall being about 35 miles away from Marco Island, from Naples, actually, even a little bit closer to Marco Island. So it's not very far away, moving at its current speed. That brings it in about 4 to 5 hours, somewhere in that vicinity, into Naples there. And as that moves in, that's when we expect to see the extreme wind associated with that. And again, you've got a very healthy band now coming right across southern parts of Miami-Dade. And look at this, the North Perry Airport, and that is in Broward County. We got a wind gust of 109 miles per hour. So that's a good 100 miles away from the core of the storm, and we're still getting winds over 100 miles per hour. So this is why we say this is such a large storm, and the damage is going to be widespread. Also, ongoing tornado warning there in St. Lucie County, and one just off to the northwest, a tornado warning getting up into Okeechobee County as well until 12:15. Storm surge flooding. This is interesting because we've got an offshore flow here, and that is actually driving water out of Tampa Bay. Some of the edges of Tampa Bay showing some ground right now because that water is being driven away from the shore. And in Naples, the water level is 3.5 feet below the normal tide level. So this water being pushed out before the storm, but after it comes in, that's going to change dramatically. And look at this. We're now seeing a water level rise of 3.5 feet at Virginia Key. So this rivals what we saw with Hurricane Wilma. 2.5 feet there in Key West. And we're going to have ongoing surge issues in the eastern part of the state. The forecast, 2 to 4 feet for parts of South Florida, say from Jupiter and on southward, Palm Beach County up towards Vero as well. Near Miami-Dade, you've got 3 to 5 feet of surge, and southern Miami-Dade down through the Keys, 5 to 10 feet. Then tremendous surge in southwest Florida, 10 to 15 feet. You do not want to be anywhere near the coast with that level of life-threatening surge. Same story here farther up the coast. Fort Myers getting getting up into Bradenton, Sarasota, and 5 to 8 feet in Tampa. And again, this is going to be coming in on the back side of that eye wall. 4 to 6 also in Georgia, parts of South Carolina, as well as the Big Bend area of Florida. So looking at the model forecast, you see the continued onshore flow in South Florida with the banding features, with winds gusting well into hurricane force. There's the
happen. Now, this thing looks like it was just planted because it's got some plant stakes on it. So this probably hasn't rooted in yet, so this isn't probably a fair example, but we have had limbs in and around the area, certainly. And it doesn't take much. When you have full canopy of leaves like we have in through here, and let this be a lesson to you, too, if you're watching us in Atlanta. We've got a tropical storm warning out for the Atlanta metro area. Remember what happened in Opal in 1995. And it's not just going to be like a passing thunderstorm. It's not going to last for 10 minutes and then it's over. This is going to go on for hours. The wind is going to build. It's going to change directions a little bit. It's going to be out of the southeast, and then it's going to be out of the southwest, and it's going to move these trees around, like shake them and twist them around. And unfortunately, that is going to cause some tree and power line outages there. Let's go join Governor Rick Scott in his press conference.
I just had a briefing with the National Hurricane Center and all Florida counties. Monroe County has reported that water was going over US 1. Hurricane Irma made landfall in the lower Florida Keys at 9:10 a.m. as a Category 4 storm. The eye of this powerful storm is now 80 miles south of Naples and approaching the Naples-Fort Myers area and will impact this later this afternoon. A vast majority of the state is experiencing sustained storm force winds. Irma will continue to make its way up Florida's west coast, impacting highly populated communities and leaving destruction in its wake. On our east coast, South Florida is experiencing increased hurricane force wind gusts, coastal flooding, and dangerous seas. In northwest Florida, we'll start to feel the impacts of the storm late tonight and early Monday. There are areas of South Florida and the Keys that have already had up to 10 inches or 12 inches of rain. Across the state, we could see an additional 8 to 15 inches of rain. A vast majority of Florida is under a hurricane warning. Millions of Floridians are being impacted by this storm. This is a serious threat of serious threat of significant storm surge flooding along the entire west coast of Florida, and this has increased to 15 feet of impact above ground level in southwest Florida. Tampa will see a surge of 5 to 8 feet. The Big Bend area will see a surge of 4 to 6 feet. We'll also see an increase in flooding of rivers throughout the peninsula. We have seen tornadoes in central South Florida, and the threat will continue today and tonight. This is a life-threatening situation. Remember, in southwest Florida, the storm surge comes after the strongest winds. Do not think the storm is over when the wind slows down. Local officials will let you know when it is safe to go out. The storm surge will rush in and could kill you. We have thousands of National Guard members and Fish and Wildlife officers on standby to help with search and rescue as soon as it is safe. But they cannot help you until the storm has passed. You need to stay in a safe place. With the storm's latest track, families in the Panhandle need to be on high alert for severe weather, including tropical storm and hurricane-force winds. Here in Tallahassee, it is likely we will experience hurricane-force winds, and families must prepare. We are doing all we can to be prepared to respond to this storm. Today, I requested a major disaster declaration from President Trump to help bring important federal resources and aid to Florida. I've spoken with the President nearly every day, as well as today, and as well as our other federal partners. We are working very closely with the federal government to make sure Floridians have the resources they need for this storm. This has been a challenging week for our state. All week, I traveled Florida to spread the message. Take this deadly storm seriously. Stay safe, be prepared, listen to local evacuation advisories. My first duty as governor is to protect the people of Florida, and the storm is here now. Everyone's family matters, every life matters. Please know that we will do anything and everything to protect and rescue every person, and we will spare no expense in doing it. This week has demonstrated that everyone around the world, that Floridians care about each other. We have each other's backs. We're proud to call Florida home, and nothing will change that. While I know we have done everything we could to prepare for this storm, we can never do enough. I've heard from other governors and from people all over the world about the ways they can help our state make it through this destruction. In fact, we have received direct support from 16 states. We've received National Guard. From Texas, we received Fish and Wildlife members. From Ohio, Incident Management Team. From Colorado, Emergency Operations Support Team. We've taken all help and all resources that have been offered. I know Florida is known for our beaches, our theme parks, and our college teams, but our most important asset is our people. Many people from all over this great country and world have asked me what they can do. If you'd like to give, text DISASTER to 20222 to make a one-time $10 donation. If you'd like to volunteer, volunteerflorida.org. Pray. I don't see prayer as a last resort. It should always be a first resort. We will continue to keep you updated as we go through this storm, but let me be very clear. We'll make it through this together. Hurricane Irma ya está impactando en nuestro estado. Este huracán es muy peligroso. Acuérdense que la vida de usted y su familia es lo más importante. Por favor, tengan cuidado. Cada familia ya debe de estar en un sitio seguro. Para más información, por favor, llamen a 1-800-342.
All right, that was Florida Governor Rick Scott talking about the preparations there in the state of Florida. And there you see the radar picture. We've got ongoing tornado warnings up near Fort Pierce into the central part of the state. I want to show you the forecast track here, which is really narrowed, and that's exactly what you'd expect. This means that we're zeroing in on this forecast now as we're getting very, very close. Probably not much deviation from this. And this is showing you that the storm is going to come right up and along that 75 corridor and moving into Naples here very shortly. But it's a large storm. It's a huge storm. So the hurricane force winds extending all the way to the east coast through tonight and tomorrow. Those hurricane force sustained winds coming up into Sarasota and Bradenton, Tampa this evening. Winds gusting up and over 100 miles per hour. That's going to go through the overnight and then begin to relent in the morning when the strongest wind will move towards the Big Bend, areas along 75 to the north there, Gainesville, as well as Ocala and into Leesburg. And then we're going to watch that strong wind continue to move up into Georgia. Right now, you've got an interesting structure to this storm. You've got one big banding feature that's moving up into southern parts of Miami-Dade County, getting up towards Lee, Collier counties as well. There is the most dangerous part of the storm. That is the eye wall, and it's not a complete eye wall. It's a sort of open on the south side right now, at least as the radar sees it. The winds have been very, very strong, well away from the center of the storm, now gusting to 64, but we did get a report of a 79-mile-per-hour wind gust. And again, when you see these bands coming in, that's where the strongest of wind is also going to move in. There's an awful lot of velocity that is off the ground, and the heavier rain in those heavier bands can bring that velocity down. And right now, that northern eye wall is only about 24 miles from Marco Island, so moving north at around 8 miles per hour. That means it's about 3 hours away, maybe a little less from Marco Island. I hope no one is on Marco Island at this point, because they're going to see the very worst of the wind. And then after the eye wall comes through, we'll be looking at the backside. We'll be looking at an onshore flow that could bring a storm surge of 10 to 15 feet in that area. And let's go out to Ron Blome right now. He's in Tampa, Florida. And Ron, this is going to be one of the most significant storms that we've seen in Tampa in a very, very long time.
In a very long time indeed. You know, I was down here in 2004 when Charlie was threatening, and of course it took that really sharp turn into Punta Gorda and did tremendous destruction there. I haven't seen Tampa this ginned up over a storm since then. Of course, Wilma in 2005 also had them concerned, but that was making more of a direct approach towards Naples. And at that point, you know, Wilma came in with just ferocious winds and crossed the Everglades, gained steam, and battered the East Coast, Fort Lauderdale. So no matter what coast you're on today, we just want to stress that there's a lot of danger out here. In fact, about an hour ago, there were some tornado signatures on radar to the east of Tampa. It's the first real threats we've seen here today along Interstate 4, and we're along Interstate 4, 30, 40 miles to our east. And I saw there was some tornado warnings all the way over to the East Coast. So no matter where this real landfall is, this wind field, as you've been talking about, is so spread out, it's going to be quite a danger. Just some light rain here in Tampa. The roads are deserted. The evacuations are complete. There's 8 shelters just in this county alone. Shelters across the bay over in St. Petersburg, down in Sarasota. They're still bringing in some special needs people, but the word from the EOCs in all the counties here today is shelter now in place, and be prepared to move to those interior rooms if you hear loud noise because of that tornado threat as these winds approach. And you know, I was just thinking, an F1 tornado, we've seen those do a lot of damage, 73 to 112 miles an hour. Well, we're talking about winds in the Tampa area later this evening of 80 to 110 miles an hour or greater. That's the same as an F1, and that's not one that is just going through. Yeah. And okay, let's go down to Paul Goodlow. Speaking of, well, Wilma made its approach into Naples. Paul is down there waiting on Irma. Paul?
All right, thanks. That's Ron Blome in Tampa. And Ron, we've been dealing with the now tropical storm force, sustained winds. Last check, sustained around 44 miles per hour. That's in the tropical storm force range, gusting now at times to 64 miles per hour. And not only has the wind increased, so has rain across this area. But again, looking behind me, you can see the water has been pushed back by more than 48 hours of this persistently easterly wind here, getting even more pronounced as we move on towards close side here and the stronger east side of that hurricane as we head over the next several hours here. So again, we've been out here all morning and gone from gusting winds in the 40s and gusts at times pointed into the hurricane force range, but definitely easily in the 60s. And now the wind is on the stinging side as it hits my exposed skin here, as waves of rain are coming around the building in front of me here. And again, the ocean is farther out than it typically is, even at low tide. And as the hurricane comes this way, we'll start seeing this come back, and then even more. say a tsunami would as it goes out and comes back fairly quickly. This will be a little more gradual, but it could be just as devastating across this area as the storm surge comes in even after the center starts to push by this area. We'll get the backside winds, a pure onshore wind versus the pure offshore wind we've been getting here for quite some time. You know, it's too late for evacuations. If you have not evacuated, it's time just to hunker down. Mike Bettis and crew just arrived at our location. They'll be taking over for us shortly. And they're saying even on the roads in here, which is not a very long drive from our hotel, which has already lost power, they're now dangerous to be out here traveling. We're going to take our time, make sure we have a route, and of course, scout the route.
All right, Paul, thank you so much. And obviously, you're going to have some communication issues when you're covering a hurricane live. Want to tell you about some of the latest tornado warnings that are in effect. One in Flagler and St. Johns counties. That's going until 1 p.m. Looking at a circulation that is now just offshore here near Crescent Beach and working onshore, sitting right in this area, right where you see that red and green couplet there. So let's take that forward as it's moving off towards the west-southwest. It's going to be coming into Summer Haven, DuPont Center, Gopher Ridge, and also into Hastings as well. Then we'll move a little farther to the south. Other tornado warnings to tell you about getting down here just to the south of Melbourne. That's Brevard and Indian River counties under tornado warning right now. Not seeing anything obvious on the velocity data, but I am right in there. There's another tornado warning that is in effect, and this is for Osceola County. And you see a pretty strong circulation that's showing up sitting right in this area. And we'll take that forward. That's going to come up towards Route 60 in short order here, moving off towards the northwest. Cannot get any towns to show up, so it looks like it is in a more rural area, but certainly you want to watch out for the possibility of a tornado there. Now, let's talk about the model forecast. We're going to see this eye wall of the storm come into southwest Florida this afternoon. That's coming up shortly as the hurricane force wind gusts continue across South Florida. Then into this afternoon, moving up there towards Fort Myers. By this evening, the core of the storm getting into Tampa and St. Pete, Bradenton. We're starting to see tremendous surge on the backside of the system right in there. And then it comes up and into north central parts of Florida early tomorrow morning and continues to move into Tallahassee by the time we get into noon tomorrow. And by tomorrow evening, very strong wind coming into the Atlanta metro area. And so we're going to be talking about perhaps some of the greatest wind damage we've seen since Hurricane Opal back in 1995 across northern parts of Georgia. I want to show you some new video coming out of Aventura, Florida. Winds really picking up here, gusting as high as 100 miles per hour in South Florida already.